Hello, listeners, and welcome to Fighting Failure, the podcast where we discuss solutions to the climate crisis. In this episode, part 4 of the energy section, we will be talking about Bitcoin and NFTs. I'm your host for this episode, Oscar Archibald.
And I'm your co-host, Asham Kanan.
So, Bitcoin is something that we've probably all heard about. It's big in the news, it's the most popular cryptocurrency, but not everyone actually understands how it works. Basically, what you need to know is that Bitcoin is a decentralized currency, meaning no one controls it, and the way that transactions are verified is by doing very difficult calculations on computers. And that is why it uses so much energy. It's because you have to do these very difficult calculations on computers. Any questions about how it works, Isham?
Not really. I don't know much about Bitcoin, so I'm excited to learn a little bit today.
Let's move on to the problems. So the first problem is astronomical energy usage. So you might have seen this in the news. Coal plants have actually been turned back on to power Bitcoin transactions. So it does just run on a computer. And I'm recording this on a computer. Hisham's, are you on your iPad or your computer or both?
I'm on my phone and my iPad.
And everyone, well, not everyone, but if you're listening to this, chances are you have a phone or a computer or something like that. And most people in the developed world do possess these sort of things. But, we don't see our bills going skyrocketing high when we just, open a Word document, right?
I mean, even in the developing world, a lot of locals in Malawi, in a developing third world nation, most people do have phones or some sort of technology.
Yeah, more people have phones than toilets.
I know, it's crazy. And more phones than electricity. So, there's so many phones in Malawi, so many people have phones and most people don't have electricity. And so people actually have to go to little shops where they can charge their phones.
Yeah, you see these phones sort of just dangling off the wall. And when we used to live in Malawi, I know all our servants would plug their phones in at work or at our house where we had electricity in order to charge them. But the thing is that, especially maybe you're seeing the news about the new Macs, M1 Max with really low power usage, our computers don't really consume that much power. As a whole, they do, but individually, the power draw is quite small. But compare this with Bitcoin mining, where you use specialized pieces of equipment that are turned to absolute max all the time, running the most calculations possible, because they just have loads and loads of GPUs. It's very specialized computers, and this does draw a huge amount of power. The thing is that in order to cater for this hugely increased power demand, some countries have had to turn back on coal plants that they had previously turned off because of that. Whoever's whistling, please stop. I'm trying to record. Please stop whistling. What was I? Countries have been having to turn back on the coal plants that they had previously turned off. So this is just undoing the green energy transition that we've been going through. If we have to turn on all these coal plants again because people want to mine Bitcoin. If you want to look at the numbers, between 33 to 110 terawatt hours per year is the estimated energy consumption. So until recently, I didn't really understand what watt hours really meant, but it is just a unit of energy that's used specifically for electricity, just like joules. If you have a toaster that runs at 1 watt and for 1 second, then that will draw 1 joule of energy. And so then a watt hour is if you have something that runs at 1 watt for an hour, that's how much energy it would use. But now a tera, the prefix, means trillion watt hours, but not just that. 33 to 110 trillion watt hours is the estimated energy consumption. So you may notice there is a large disparity in these numbers. 33 is comparatively small compared to 110 terawatt hours. And this is because Bitcoin is quite anonymous. It's difficult to trace people, it's difficult to trace transactions, it's difficult to trace miners. So it's difficult to know, are they using power efficient hardware? Where does their energy come from? All these sort of things. There's also a statistic that maybe it's 73% renewable energy is used to power Bitcoin, but another estimate is as low as 40%. And the estimates are due to sort of hydropower in sort of China and those areas. So there's a huge disparity in the numbers. Because of this opaqueness of the system, we can't really know how much energy is really being used.
I'm looking at the show notes and I'm seeing you're saying it's not all renewable, so about 39 to 73% is renewable or is not renewable?
Is renewable.
that's mainly as a result of hydroelectricity, right?
Yeah, because a lot of crypto mining occurs or used to occur before the Chinese crackdown in China, which does have quite a few hydroelectric dams, especially in the regions that had a lot of crypto mining. However, China has now cracked down on crypto mining, so there's basically no crypto mining in China anymore, which means it's being outsourced to countries like Kazakhstan. So they'd be interested to see how that shifts the balance of how much renewable power is being used. And I think Kazakhstan is also now trying to crack down because it's putting a huge strain on the grids in remote regions. So it is really interesting to see how that causes such a huge amount of power draw, especially in countries that don't use that much power otherwise, that the energy authorities are actually having to crack down on it to save their electricity grids from this huge power draw and this huge load. So it's quite insane how much energy is used just to power these transactions.
Yeah, and I think even the fact that, the large majority of, renewables in the Bitcoin industry, it comes from hydro, also says a lot because, hydro's not really the best renewable energy. It's not a great solution. There's numerous problems with hydro. I mean, you can go back and listen to previous episodes. I think we've mentioned it in a ton of them. And I think just like hydro, the damming causes flooding upstream and downstream. It causes drought, and then it throws the ecosystem out of balance. And there's so many problems with it. And so with like boosting the coal industry, that's one problem, putting off the emissions. But, if you're boosting the hydro industry, you're just throwing ecosystems out of balance. So I guess there's not really a win kind of switching to either side, is there?
That said, the news really is about turning coal plants back on. I don't think there's so much about building new hydro plants. And I think if hydro plants are already built, definitely use it to its maximum because it is a green source of energy if it's well managed in terms of not causing huge amounts of drought downstream or flooding downstream.
The removal of already established hydro dams can also be hugely detrimental. So as long as there's not new dams being built, and I think dams are disincentivized now more and more, so there's less dams being built. But as long as there's not new dams being built to support the industry, then it's fine.
So the next problem is maybe not strictly environmental, but Bitcoin itself is actually quite a primitive cryptocurrency. It was the first, so it's quite slow and inefficient in terms of how many transactions the network can handle per second, and how long it takes for money to be transferred, and the fees that you have to pay to transfer money. It's actually, compared to standard bank transactions on networks like Visa or other cryptocurrencies like Litecoin or Ethereum, Bitcoin is actually seen nowadays as quite inferior, but that's not really an environmental problem. I just thought it'd be worth mentioning that it causes a huge amount of problems, and it's also really not the best cryptocurrency at all. Then the last major problem is, like I said, Bitcoin mining uses a huge amount of very specialized components, especially GPUs, which can handle sort of these parallel calculations all at the same time. And so Bitcoin miners just buy hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of GPUs and put them in these huge mining rigs, just to be able to mine the Bitcoin and verify these transactions, and in return get rewarded with Bitcoin. This means that people who actually want to use GPUs, maybe if they're modeling the weather and climate change, is one application of a GPU, or maybe people just are gaming for recreation. All this perfectly good computer equipment is being wasted instead on mining Bitcoin. And this of course means that more of it has to be produced, and there's a global chip shortage, and all of these things, compounding factors, mean that there's a GPU shortage really, because so much of it is being used for Bitcoin. Let's move on to the solutions. So the first most obvious solution is renewable energy. And the thing is, if it's easy and cheaper for miners to use renewable energy, they will choose it, because electricity for miners is the biggest cost. Because the way Bitcoin mining works is that you pay a huge amount of money for the electricity to do these calculations, to verify transactions on the network. And in return, if you get the sort of calculation verification right, you get rewarded with a sum of Bitcoin. And this is what generally makes the books balance out, is that you get money from the Bitcoin, you get the Bitcoin, and that pays for the electricity, and hopefully you can make a profit from that. So if it would be easier for miners to choose renewable energy because it's cheaper, which it can be in many circumstances, and is getting cheaper and cheaper, then the miners will choose it because that makes them more profitable. So another thing that miners could do is build their own solar panels. And it's a safe investment because in most countries, if you have solar panels, you can sell power from the solar panels back to the grid and make money from that. And you'll get a return on your investment in a certain amount of years, depending how much you paid for the solar panels and how much you get paid for the electricity you sell. And this means that miners can reduce the fixed cost of electricity from a one-time investment, just like GPUs are a one-time investment for the mining. And if they stop mining, they have this source of power that they can sell to the grid for money all the time. So the next solution is a cryptocurrency called Ethereum, which is transitioning to something called proof of stake. So whereas in Bitcoin you have proof of work, you have to do a lot of computationally intensive tasks to verify transactions. That's called proof of work. With Ethereum, you have to do proof of stake. So this basically means that the people who verify the transactions need to show that they have a large stake in the Ethereum currency. In order to compare them, let's just put it this way. In order to hack Bitcoin, you need to have 51% of the mining power, i.e. you would need to have 51% of the computers that mine on the Bitcoin network. And that would be very difficult to achieve. It's basically impossible. And it's the same sort of thing with Ethereum, is that you need to own 51% of all the Ethereum in circulation in order to be able to hack the system. So both of them are very secure. Proof of work is ultimately slightly more secure because of the computation-intensive tasks, but proof of stake is still secure enough that it would work because all you have to prove is that you have Ethereum currency. It means that it's far less energy intensive. You don't have to do all these very computation intensive tasks, which draw a huge amount of electricity. But however, it's difficult to transition because 95% of miners on the network would need to agree to this transition. But Ethereum has been working on it for a while, and hopefully that will come to fruition and we'll get a much more environmentally friendly currency.
Oh, it's a lot to take in. I hope the listeners got all of that. I'm not the hugest fan of cryptocurrencies just because they're so unstable. I think their value fluctuates so much that it's hard to safely invest in cryptocurrencies as of now, which I think is just another reason to avoid them on the whole. But yeah, it's definitely something interesting. And I'm happy that we're doing this episode because I didn't know much about cryptocurrencies prior to this, just kind of what I've heard from, around school and in the occasional conversation that's come up. Yeah, this is a great episode, Oz.
The next thing I wanted to talk about, and this is not necessarily a solution, but something to maybe take note of, is that actually Bitcoin has a huge valuation. If you added up all the Bitcoins that are currently in circulation, how much they're worth, you get a huge, huge valuation, millions and billions of dollars worth of value. So the thing is actually, if you think about it, could Bitcoin be worth it in terms of how much value is extracted from this energy usage compared to other uses of energy, compared to maybe something else that uses energy and generates money, like, I don't know, making a YouTube video, compared to mining Bitcoin? Could it be that Bitcoin actually is worth its energy usage in how much value it generates? And the thing is, like you said, the value fluctuates so much. I would say no, it's a bit silly and there's better ways to generate value. But it is actually something to know, is Bitcoin necessarily wasting energy if it is making money? And the thing about it being decentralized and all of this is, how much is it really adding to the economies of countries? But it's just interesting to think about, is it's not necessarily wasting energy. It's just using a lot of energy for digital currencies, which are a bit iffy in and of themselves. I know the title of this episode is Bitcoin and NFTs. We haven't actually mentioned NFTs yet because NFTs tend to run on the Ethereum network, which we've talked about a bit. But basically NFTs are, it's called a non-fungible token. So basically what it is, it's like a digital certificate saying you own a work. This is generally sort of digital art like Nyan Cat, which is a cat meme. Lots of strange things have become NFTs and lots of them have sold for ridiculously high amounts. I think NFTs are a bit silly because it doesn't actually give you ownership. You don't have the only source file. You don't have the copyright. You don't have many of these things that are typically associated with the ownership of an artwork. You just have a digital certificate saying you own it. And that feels a little bit removed in the way that you have it. But do you really have it? And it's only worth something because we say it's worth something. And that feels a bit worrying compared to if you actually have a piece of art. That's something physical you own, whereas having this digital token of something that, I could search up Nyan Cat right now, put it on a YouTube video, and I wouldn't get a copyright strike, even though someone technically owns it as an NFT. So we could release our podcast artwork as an NFT, and I've actually made some pixel art stuff that I think would be really cool as an NFT. I'll link it in the description, but we're not going to sell it as an NFT because obviously that's terrible for the environment, and it's a bit consumeristic as well to just sell these random stuff. that's bad for the environment just because it looks nice. But if you're interested in what Funny Valley would look like as an NFT, there will be a picture in the description. What do you think about NFTs, Show? Because it is quite a divisive topic, and it is a way for artists to make a lot of money as well and get recognition for their work on the internet, and keep the copyright as well. But it's also a bit consumeristic perhaps and uses a lot of energy as well. What do you think?
Well, I'm not entirely sure, but I'm a musician, and I'm not, I'm not a graphic artist. I'm a musician, and I don't know how I feel about just the way that the internet has influenced the market for artists on the whole. Because I think, the industry for music and the industry for art and theater used to be so centralized around like the actual purchase of the artwork. So you would maybe, if as a musician selling your music, your supporters would have to go to the record store, and rather than being able to purchase or support or fund one song, they would have to purchase the entire record, which also had to be produced and exported. So then you get the extra income from that. So I think just kind of the way that the internet's influenced the market is that you're making less money off of your work because people can access your work, especially like as a musician, on places like Spotify, on streaming platforms like Spotify for free, for very low cost. And I mean, it's like per 1,000 plays, you get, a couple dollars, and it's this kind of ridiculous system now. And so I don't know how NFT is contributing on the whole, but it's definitely harder to make money as a musician in the modern industry, but it is easier to get recognized as a musician in the modern industry. And I find that to be, a benefit because it's easy to promote your work. And maybe that is a good way to launch stuff. Maybe it's a good idea to be able to promote your artwork digitally. It's just that it's harder to make money once you get going. I don't know entirely how NFTs contribute to that. I mean, what do you think, Oz?
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting point you make about sort of the fandom and it's being more accessible and more people can follow your work on the internet. And something that's maybe useful about NFTs in that circumstance is that maybe a super fan could literally just own the digital token of a certain song that you've made or the album cover of your debut album or something like that. And that's something that maybe fans would really value and other fans would value, and it would create a resale value. So I think it's promising for musicians as well as graphic artists, but it's an interesting point you make about art online. So if you don't have anything else to add, then I think we'll wrap it off there. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Yeah, I think so, Oz.
Bye.
Thank you, Oz. See you all later. Bye.
Hisham has to go make a Christmas tree.